about, there we go. And I know it's a topic that you've heard a lot of, and you maybe are getting a little bit tired of it, or maybe not, but we think it's just a critical milestone in the industry. And so we're going to go through this, hopefully have time for questions, but also give you a lot of opportunity over the course of the next few weeks and months to be able to follow up and to be heard on what we're going to be doing. So just sort of to level set, I thought it'd be good to just like give you a little bit of currency about Cloud Security Alliance right now. And I've got there sort of the original mission statement that I used still, and to talk about the cloud and what we do, and sort of this duality of we were always here to help secure the cloud, but we understood how transformational it was going to be for all other forms of IT. And so it was also about how cloud is actually going to secure everything else. And so we talk a little bit about those core pillars of our research and education, user credentialing, provider certification. And that mission statement, we've exceeded it over the last few years. And I think we're going to need to probably update that in light of where we're going and what we're looking to do. But just to give you a little perspective there. And also, I think it's just important to remind people, as we are looking to try to do some big things and some important things in AI, to just kind of remind you of this footprint that we've developed over the course of the last 14 plus years of individual membership, chapters all over the place. The corporate members, which are core to what we do, working groups, have so many of the individual members being actually contributing volunteers. It's a huge army that we as a staff at CSA program manage. Lots of research, probably the biggest, as far as I'm aware of repository of cloud security assurance in our STAR registry. So we've got a good footprint here for what I think we need to do next. So certainly I don't need to belabor a lot of the points about artificial intelligence and we are right now. I'm certainly a believer it's one of maybe the biggest technology milestone of all time, and that certainly could be debated, but it's a very big one. And what's really interesting is we see the innovation so quickly happening so quickly now, where when we're working with something like a ChatGPT, we're just saying, oh, it can't do that, and then someone figures out a way to make it do something new that we didn't think was possible. And I certainly have been told by a lot of people on boards or CISOs or other executives that are attending board meetings, it appears to be the hottest topic overall. And how I think really sort of sums it up, this dichotomy is we see a lot of enterprises, large enterprises, particularly when you talk about regulated enterprises, they're blocking it or have some extreme limitations on the use of generative AI. And at the same time, they've got the innovation all over. I think we're going to need to mute someone here. Maybe you can handle that. So we have that sort of issue of this companies blocking it at the same time. They're really trying to figure out how can we use this to the maximum. And so that's kind of that gap that we think we need to work with. And that was a McKinsey number there. 86% of CXOs they've surveyed have no or limited responsible AI program. So I think also something that's very true is that there is a real lack of understanding in how LLMs work, large language models, under the hood, how they're delivered as commercial services. And despite that, we're seeing governments moving pretty aggressively to sort of get out ahead, which makes sense, but on maybe a lack of as good of an understanding as if we could take our time that they would have to create different sorts of regulations and things like that. And Eilina, did you want to just go over the next couple slides talking about some of you've done a little bit of research on what governments are doing?
Yeah, sure. It's definitely interesting to see different agencies, government entities around the globe try to address some get ahead, which sadly they're not, right? But they are trying to come up with frameworks and pillars to really focus on areas of AI, the most important areas of AI. So we saw the White House here in the States release their 5 principles to guide design, use, and development of AI. And they had their as part of that, they're also looking to figure out how to establish a national AI research resource center, and then really fine tune this initial kind of framework that they've released. In the EU, they definitely are sort of the first to vote to adopt an AI, which really talks about banning systems with unacceptable levels of risks and trying to create some guardrails. It typically, with these types of acts in the parliament, it takes a couple of years for them to get through negotiations to actually bring something to fruition, from what I've gathered. We're also seeing some senators in our U.S. Congress try to come up with different bills that can address AI. They're talking about appeals processes, and one, they're looking to make sure that the U.S. maintains some sort of competitive stance. And so another bill that was recently introduced is looking to establish an office to look at that competition out there. And then, of course, I think on the next slide, I have a few more that I cite. Obviously, NIST, we actually heard from them maybe 3 weeks ago about their launching an AI working group. And we're hoping, of course, given all of our longtime engagement with NIST, that we can have some representatives involved there. But again, it's adding to the already existing cybersecurity framework and just addressing some of the AI risks throughout the entire life cycle, from to help developers all the way to buyers. They're thinking that that's going to be maybe a year and a half to 2 years to finally create that AI risk management framework. China too. Now, I think there may have been some updates recently to this news, but they have some interim measures, and they're looking to have these take effect in August. Right now, there are no punitive damages for any violations, but the bottom line is they're definitely wanting AI providers to have some sort of security review. They want them to register their algorithms with the government, which of course is not all that surprising. And there are other countries too who are trying to get it some acts on the books, and that includes Canada. And we're hearing from entities like the World Economic Forum that these efforts to try to regulate AI definitely appear to be gathering some pace. So we'll see what happens. So far, the last count, and this was only maybe a week or two ago, there was an estimated 37 bills that have been passed into law around the world. So, a lot of work being done there. And I think it's certainly because of how viral we've seen AI being adopted just by the mass public generally.
Yeah, and sort of like it's this fear of the unknown, I think, is creating a lot of activities, and that's in one sense how we solve problems. But I just wasn't going to really go over this in big detail, but this is just one slide out of a presentation that I'm doing for our AI Summit next week, and just as I've taken something like this and just sort of socialized it, this is like pretty basic stuff in terms of explaining, and there's a lot more to it, as those of you who've dug into it a lot and know about large language models, but just sort of understanding that, this is not consciousness, and this is not really a database in the traditional sense, and it's a statistical model for predicting the sequence of words, and it's possible because of just so much is being pushed in terms of the compute power, and it's being delivered as a service. But it's just sort of an example as I go test, and there's a lot of hearkening back to the original work we did where we were talking and introducing this new concept of cloud computing and how it works. That there's a lot of basic things that people just were not understanding, and we're going to do a lot more there. So you saw the first slide. We're calling this the CSA AI Safety Initiative. And to give you just sort of a high level of this, I have a couple of slides. And the mission statement is and this will somewhat seem fairly familiar, as we are using a little bit of the CSA initial template, an approach and strategy. But we want to create trusted best practices that are consensus oriented, and we want to make them freely available. We understand that this is a subset of the overall AI tree, but that generative AI is where we're going to focus initially, and even within that, probably more time on the textual LLMs. There's obviously generative AI that's audio, video, graphical, and we will spend time on that as well. But I think we're going to just sort of look at where we see most of the pain point and needs. And we're calling this AI Safety Initiative. Over time, we feel like we would be addressing all forms of it. And there may be some areas that we start something now that have sort of a long tail of deliverables that would focus on some of the other areas that we don't feel they're as pressing right now. But this is part of why we want to launch this, is we want to make sure we understand what the market is asking for. So we want to do that. We want to achieve that mission statement by having the right portfolio of research, education, certification, and figure out what the other tools are. And we think we've got a good sort of template and a chapter model and all sorts of things that we can do to make this successful. So provide a little bit more color. You're seeing a lot of different organizations that are starting to send out guidance and getting engaged, and Eileen has shared the government side of this. So we feel like we need to take a leadership role, because this is really something that is delivered as a service, and it really is, it's fitting very closely, and it's enabled by the cloud model. And in some instances, you can just say it is cloud, and it's just a new feature of cloud to a degree in how it's being enabled in the market. And that's a big reason why we're here and it's gone so viral, is because we're able to take all those huge investments in the NVIDIA, Mellanox sorts of configurations and other hardware like that, and make it available to any person, is because of this being done as a cloud service. And so we want to focus there. We're not really focused on this, the far future and the matrix sorts of things that people are concerned about, we'll look at certain aspects of that where we feel like we need to get started now. But we feel, and I think I've said this before, if we build in sort of a good framework now when this is fairly nascent, that as it gets more sophisticated, we're going to be in the best possible situation. So we want to be really pragmatic. We want to look at the same sort of issues in how organizations can be compliant with existing laws and laws as they come. I think most of it is existing legal framework, frankly, and translating how AI delivers itself to those existing frameworks. We want to really make sure we nail that shared responsibility between a consumer that's maybe using one of these large LLMs to build their own applications, or they're building their own internal private LLM on proprietary organizational information, and whatever federated data model ends up coming out of that we have that shared responsibility figured out correctly. And it's important to know, just as cloud has evolved and there's a small number of what we might call hyperscalers or very large cloud infrastructure providers, is that there's hundreds of thousands of SaaS applications. And that's what we expect to see in terms of, as the consumer, the end consumer is impacted by AI, it's going to be through that sort of channel of so many different people developing software, and SaaS companies range from some of the largest companies in the world to just very small mom and pop shops. And so that's a big part of like how we've thought about it and how we've structured our STAR program, things like that. So we expect that to be a way in which we are sort of ahead of the game and how we can move forward. So the proposed scoping we're thinking about, and this is sort of comes out of when we did actually a paper already on security implications of ChatGPT, was let's come up with the usage guidelines. Let's understand how cybersecurity, our industry, can make AI safer, and how AI is actually going to transform cybersecurity. And I'm seeing from some of our members, you're already like sort of communicating out there how you are using generative AI and how this is like making security more efficient for organizations that allow them to automate a lot more like SOC tasks and things like that, for example. So we need to understand like how AI, there's already a collection of attacks out there, how this can be, how it can be attacked directly, so we can continue to improve it. Nothing is going to be perfect, we know that, and nothing's going to be 100% secure and safe, and AI is no different. But we just want to understand that as well as we can. We understand how the malicious actors, what is it, Worm GPT was the latest thing that we've seen, how they can, will, and are using AI. And then we just want to make sure we have a very good sense of a lot of the future challenges to make sure that we're dealing with this appropriately. So that's at a high level what we are thinking about. And Eilina, you want to maybe just sort of like say from CSA's perspective, here's some like the different sections of the organization that are going to contribute to make this initiative a reality.
Yes, indeed. And I don't think this would be surprising to anyone. It really reflects much of what we already do. We're an extremely consensus-based kind of organization, and much of our many of our initiatives. And so this one is no different. Certainly, we'll be looking to all of you as corporate members to provide support and input. We also have some of you engaged in already some of our other initiatives as well. So I would imagine there will be some overlap, of course, with the likes of the CXO Trust effort and advisory council, or our financial services initiative and the sort of steering committee there, as well as ZT. We're also going to be working with our chapters. Oftentimes you'll see CSA Global partner with the many chapters to hold in-person events and to get them engaged in some of our global events as well. And most assuredly, our research analysts in-house will be working with the wider industry to really help drive the calendar for next year. Already, our leaders in that particular division are really working together to determine some of the priorities and to highlight some of the areas that we'll need to tackle more immediately. And once we have that editorial calendar, if you will, or research calendar, we'll share with folks to get additional input. Training is going to be a big part of this, just as we have with our Zero Trust initiative, for example. We've been releasing various modules that eventually will underpin our certificate of Zero Trust, Cloud Zero Trust. We'll be doing similar efforts here. And then the STAR program, that notion of making sure we have process in place for organizations to show that they have offerings that meet certain standards and cybersecurity requirements will be a big play here as well. And I mentioned events already. Obviously, we already have one scheduled. We have our AI Summit next week that we encourage you and your teams to attend. And we'll continue to not only outreach to many of the thought leaders in the AI space specifically, but we'll want input from all of the CXOs and team members from our members to help provide input for these various and sundry events that we'll be holding specifically on AI and some of the risks and solutions and all that jazz. So a lot underway. This kind of shows some of the players. I'm sure we'll think of more as we move forward.
All right, thanks, Eilina. And I wanted to start getting into a little bit more about things that we have underway that we're getting going, and talk a little bit more about how you can start thinking about getting involved here. So first thing here is I wanted to, and there has been an announcement that went out I think last week, but to make you aware of that, Caleb Sima is chairing this initiative. And so Caleb, I think a lot of people in the industry know him. I've known him for over 20 years. And he's an incredible thinker, and he's a person who's just very, very curious about new trends, about learning. And he's one of those people who are going to be learners for life. And he's just been very successful out of that by just understanding changes in the world, how they impact cybersecurity, and how to think about protective measures, as well as how to think about very good ways to be able to find new opportunities as well. So there's a little bit there of his track record is pretty interesting in that he's been sort of this person who's been a cybersecurity entrepreneur and created companies, but then he's also gone over to the other side and taken an executive role in enterprises as well, regulated enterprises. And the way he put it to me is just like, this is such a huge trend right now that he really was doing a great job at Robinhood, and this was a job that he really loved, but that he needed to have that opportunity to not miss this trend. And so he's just very humble. He's said he's got a little bit of imposter syndrome because he's learning a lot about AI right now. But to kind of rewind to how we did Cloud Security Alliance at the very beginning, we started with cybersecurity professionals that brought in the cloud experts and were educated by them and sort of created our strategy and our initial deliverables based on that collaboration between the cybersecurity experts, asking the questions, being skeptical, and kind of getting to that place. And we got auditors, we got legal people, so I think there's going to be a fair amount of that. But Caleb's really thrown himself into this. I don't know if he's actually on the call. I didn't see him on the list. You can let us know, Caleb. He's working really hard on his presentation for next week, which is very provocative, demystifying LLMs. And so I think we need to do a lot of that demystifying right now to be able to focus on what the important areas are. So Caleb's going to be leading this. A little bit about how we are initially structuring this is and Eileen had talked about all the different functions of CSA, and I just wanted to pull out a few here and that are really core. And so the executive committee is going to be very cross-functional, make sure we get all the different expertise to cover the different areas to really say, this is the scope of what CSA should be doing. Here's the roadmap, short-term, long-term. And this is something that we want to avoid, sort of this blank slate and reinvent the wheel approach for this executive committee. So we have underway research already, and we have some initial work and starting to develop training. And so we want to do a lot more curation of other things that are out there. We don't want to reinvent the wheel from really good research produced by other organizations. So we're going to be doing things while the strategy is being built and make them aware in the executive committee of all of these different areas. So their job is going to be more streamlined. And we hope by doing that, by having sort of this bi-directional relationship between this executive committee and sort of our wide open research groups that should have a freedom to go be curious and look in a lot of different areas, so they can do that. The STAR group that's going to be doing a lot of the certification and compliance work, the training group, that this is all bi-directional. And so we're very hopeful that we can have a pretty good plan in place of October, November. So breaking down just a little bit more of the executive committee, it's actually going to be, one core group and then a couple of probably fairly large subcommittees. And we haven't decided how many will be in this core executive committee. We don't know how many people want to be in that, but we do want to make sure that we have something that just checks all the boxes in terms of making sure we've got diversity in sort of every way you could think about that, and that we cover all of the different domains of expertise we feel we need. But how we see this happening is that every person in this that's on this call, it's representing organizations that are corporate members of CSA. We look for you to all be participating in this membership oversight subcommittee to make sure your voice is heard on an ongoing basis. And then we're going to have this separate sort of industry affiliates, so partner, sister organizations, other groups, country governments. Likely, I put an example, the Motion Picture Association, because they've already said they would like to be in there, and it's specifically the TPN group that creates essentially the cloud providers that are specific to the entertainment industry. They do the vetting and certification there. So the Motion Picture Association, TPN, to be more accurate. And so we expect to have a lot more of those. And if you can't decide, and we can be switching these things out, but we're thinking having 2 representatives in the subcommittee that's fair. we'll just sort of see how things go and try to manage through this. So that's going to be the structure. More on this to come. So, what's going to make this really successful is we've got to get strong industry participation. We already have as corporate members like a very large amount of the cybersecurity industry. I'd say all of the major players in cloud, and we know that all of the major players in cloud are going to be sort of key sort of vehicles by which AI is going to be delivered as a service. And so we're doing those conversations with what you'd call the pure play AI organizations now. We've signed up one as a member and a participant in this, Ask Sage. That's I don't want to minimize or incorrectly state what they do, but it's a lot like ChatGPT for the federal government, and they've moved into some other industries as well. And their CEO is actually helping on some of this initial thoughts on training, because they're sort of seeing what people need to be educated on right now. So that's very important. We get the industry involved. We think it's really important, this whole demystifying and having a real strong consensus definition. There's different definitions out there already, and I think we got to figure out what makes the most sense. It really helped us when we started CSA, and we were working on some of our own definitional work. And then right at that same time, NIST was working on the same thing separately. We got connected and we used what they did, and then we just did some of our own contextualizing of it. And one of the big things we did was sort of explain how software as a service resided on top of infrastructure as a service, sort of this layered model, so you could understand like this mashup approach. And it's going to be, I think, very similar in what we need to do here. But it's got to get also very granular, so we can understand some of the very specific areas like the vector databases that sort of are in support of the large language models. There's a lot there, but that's going to be very important. And it's really, and this is something Caleb says a lot, it's like, okay, what's really different? What's really different? Are we talking about, if we're concerned about data protection, is it the same data exfiltration? Where is it really different? What are the new risks? Where do we need some new guidance? And where do we need to take existing principles and best practices and update them and contextualize them for the generative AI world? So it's gonna be really important that we do that right, and we don't do a lot of reinventing the wheel. And so we need to do that, and then we need to get that out to market using our footprint that we mentioned and other things that are out there. So, having said some of that on, this is what we are thinking strategically. There are some things that I think we're pretty sure, and we'll probably, like, again, this idea of doing a few things simultaneously, that our CSA STAR program, which is sort of the standard for being able to prove you have a trusted cloud service, extending that in a relatively soon, we'll see what relatively soon means, to be able to do some assessments and third-party certification of cloud AI services. That's something that I think is a no-brainer that we need to do. The question is because we're implying that we need to have either an updated cloud controls matrix or some level of a new controls framework. I think it's probably the former, that it's a derivative in some way of the cloud controls matrix. We got to figure out what are the key things that are missing out of that we need to go start working on. So that'll be pretty important. Like I said, I think there's just, and Eileen has said as well, this credentialing, having that good sort of high level guidance on to help organizations understand what's the way in which they should be thinking about managing the risks. What are all the factors that they need to have? in order to calculate that risk appropriately and make the right decisions. And I think we're going to want to just dive into a lot of the key tools that organizations are using. If it's the NIST cybersecurity framework, it's MITRE ATT&CK, it's maturity models, it's PCI, whatever else, to do the right things to be able to contextualize those. Because I think it's really a lot of what we have, building a lot of what we have in terms of best practices, a bridge to the future is going to be a key with what we do here. So we also want to then get like really out of the box thinking on this to say, what are some things that just don't exist at all? So there's this concept of having an external oracle to an AI system to make sure it is healthy, as truthful as possible. And that's not something that really exists in that sort of context in cloud. The innovation is happening so quickly that we need a good way to curate that. So we're going to have an aspect of this to be very wide open and have that blank sheet of paper. And if we didn't have any sort of constraints, then what would be some new ways we would think about securing AI? So we ultimately believe it's going to be this sort of combination, because we know there's a lot of legacy that's out there, and there's going to be the world we're in, the world we want to go to, and it's going to be this sort of combination. So we will want to hear from you. Timeline wise, that thing I mentioned about a couple of representatives, we'd like your first pass, and we're gonna try and bug all of you on this, but we'd like to have you send those representatives their email addresses, because that's how we're going to start. As we'd love to get that by August 15th. We're going to do more of the broader industry call to action next week at this AI summit. You should check it out, and whether you are participating in it, which we tried to make some of that available, but also just to I think there's just some really solid presentations that are proposing things that I haven't seen before, between what Caleb's doing and talking about demystifying LLMs, to the CISO at Universal Music Group thinking through, here's a responsible sort of framework for enterprises that he's thinking through, and he's going to provide some details on that. The CEO of Ask Sage sort of seeing how this is how he sees this transforming business, and just there's all sorts of great sessions. So we expect to be able to put together these executive committee, subcommittee meetings, initial ones, which would be virtual online, in the late August timeframe. And then, one thing we wanted to circle, we've decided we need to get together as a community as much as we can. And so we have a lot of you probably aware of it, we have our September conference, in-person conference in the Seattle area, the week of September 18th to the 22nd. So Friday, the 22nd, we didn't have anything scheduled, kind of left it open. And we are going to move forward with a think tank day, and we're gonna see how much over the course of the next couple of weeks, what sorts of ideas there, and do we want to do more sort of some really good presentations on important topics here, or do we want to do more of working sessions on some of the key areas that kind of, if we can do that, if we get the right people there, that second idea would be my preference, with maybe a little bit of presentations. And I think it's really something where we want to see what we can do to really progress things. And then again, looking to have like a really strong roadmap in place. And we may even have some interim research deliverables at the same time as well. But that's what we're looking at in terms of the overall time frame here. So we want to hear from you, both in this membership subcommittee. We want to hear from you on several things, and what is it really that will make this initiative valuable to you, and also you think to the industry. You know, we have some of you you're representing large enterprises, what we might call end users, and you're in that sort of that camp I talked about, that you're cautious right now. You maybe don't have that full responsible adoption framework and plan. You don't have all the best practices, but you're looking to enable the business to accelerate this. So we want to make sure we understand what we can do for you. And we may want to have some of you in specific focus groups. We want to hear from the AI service providers, which again, there's some pure play AI companies, and then there's like large providers that are doing this. And we want to understand what you're trying to do to be able to accelerate this adoption. And as I'd said before, a large number of that are going to be the SaaS organizations that are enhancing what they do with AI. We want to hear from the cybersecurity solution providers. It's very, very important to us that we are evangelizing more, better generative AI inside of cybersecurity solutions, so that they are better, but also that we are building greater awareness of cybersecurity solutions out there that are available to help sort of secure that AI journey, to help both of the other two constituents that are in the previous bullets there. So we're happy to have you reach out, do some of this in the context of some of the meetings, the structure we're going to do. We'll be contacting everyone. I like having conversations, and there's enough time in the day. We can split this up with our exec team and with our schedules, because it's so important. I'll do as many meetings, one-on-one meetings with corporate members as it takes to really help you understand this. So we're doing this. It's not contingent on anything. Certainly, we're going to figure out, are there logical ways that are going to make the most sense for us to fund this. We've been cautious, like many of you, over the last year on what our spend has looked like, but we know we need to grow to do this. And so we're going to look at a lot of different things. You know, we're going to look at likely an additional, and I won't get into all the details, but an additional legal entity that is more of like a foundation, if you're familiar with that just opens up different sorts of funding sources. So we haven't figured all that out. We love your input there, but we're going to have to figure out how to get enough resources to be able to do the hiring, do the contracting, to do all the things we need to do to make this as successful as possible. So we want to make sure at the core, whatever we're doing here is, like, from your perspective, solving the right problems. So that's it. That's what we're doing. It's like we're thrilled about it. We're excited. We feel this is absolutely where we need to be. This is absolutely not going to mean that we're not going to stop, or that we're going to stop, or we're going to slow down anything else we are doing. We're going as aggressive as ever in cloud native things and in multi-cloud, data sovereignty, zero trust, because these things are going to actually be a big part of the solution. I think zero trust is going to be an incredibly important part of how we have a lot of these AI safety frameworks, responsible frameworks work. So we're going to be doing everything CSA is doing, and we're going to also be doing this AI safety initiative, but we're going to need to do this pretty rapidly. We can't take 14 years to get this done. It's like we're talking 2-3 years to have like a very substantial a portfolio that's pretty complete. So with that, I'm gonna stop there, and we do have time for questions. It's a pretty big group, so I don't know, Megan, if you're going to have people raise their hands or do chat or whatever else, but we've got about 15 minutes for questions.
Yeah, either raise your hand to speak up or unmute yourself, or you can type your question in the chat, whatever you feel more comfortable with.
And Oh, I was just going to say real quick. I mean, as Jim said, we're definitely open. We've been having meetings with industry friends and members and chapter leaders. So if any of you want to take us aside, talk to any of the executive team members, and just give us your insight and your thoughts off record, we definitely welcome that. We'd be glad to set up some one-on-ones. So let us know.
Yeah, and if you're shy, feel free to hit us up at any point, but feel free, if you want to question any of the premise of what we're doing, we'd love to hear that as well. Now's the time to make sure that we have the right course as we start this boat in that direction.
Quick question, apologies, Luigi from Lloyd's. So the working groups, I attended some of the calls. The audience is quite large and it's sometimes hard to have a conversation. Is there space for offline conversation, like sharing documents via email or some sort of forum or any other asynchronous working process?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think we're because there, you are correct that like large working groups, we sometimes have them that they're too small as well, and we don't feel like we get the right sort of consensus opinion. But in terms of having smaller groups and using different formats like email to do this, yeah, absolutely, that's not a problem to go. Being flexible in our working group configuration to address what your concerns there.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with the CSA Circle platform too, that's another great way to interact if you can't make the meeting times or you just want to have discussions with some of the smaller groups within there. So they break down a lot of those work groups into work streams where you might be able to find some better interactions there.
Cool. Does someone have their...
I might add that the proposed discussion on the 22nd could be challenging, and that I think for some of us anyway, attending September, that would be a travel day. But, maybe if it's early enough.
The September 22nd. Yeah, we're not going to get everyone there, and we're definitely going to be starting to have a more extensive timeline. We want to just very quickly let you know the things that are happening that are very imminent. We could think about having a hybrid session, I think, and we may do that if we don't get a critical mass. I do think we will get critical mass in person there. So, but we'll figure this all out. The decisions about what we're going to do are not going to be made in any one meeting. This is going to be very global, and we're going to be doing a lot of travel, a lot of road shows around to try and talk to everyone. Looks like Renaud, do I have that right as a question?
Yeah, quick one. Sorry, just for my understanding, Renaud, I'm basically based in France, so excuse me for my accent. Just a quick one. We see that this topic can appear with different way. There is vendor with engine AI in their solution. There is some risk to analyze because using AI for the business, AI for IT, AI at the customer. Businesses bring some risk, bring some needs of compliance, and also we could use AI for our own needs on the day-to-day as cybersecurity consultant or leader. And this, there is different topic, and I don't know if we should speak about this topic and make confusion of it. Should we split them and address them, differently, or what do you recommend about that?
That's a great question. It's actually one I've been thinking about, and so we didn't do Cloud Security Alliance. We didn't start it in a way where we really tried to think through a lot of use cases around cloud. Our friends at Anissa and Daniele Catadou is our CTO who came from Anissa, and that's where I met him. They actually did a sort of a use case sort of structured to their guidance. And I've kind of been thinking about when that area where I was talking about is really important to have a definition that possibly really core to that we get together and we articulate like I don't know what number it would take, but a number of use cases that would tell us, to your point, does this require a different sort of research approach, different best practices? We need to be open-minded about that. So that might be how I suggest us. I think it would be a good exercise in any case for us to be really articulating, come up with a structure of what that would mean to articulate use cases and take that as like a core part of cloud or the AI definition and moving forward. So we'll continue to think about that and love your thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? We got a few more minutes here. We'll probably just keep it open and hang out. If you're not monitoring chat, one of our researchers mentioning that we've had some AI usage policy meetings and looking to get a draft out fairly soon on that, and then more meetings there. So there is, like I said, there's some research that's going underway, and there's a Cloud Security Alliance.ai URL that just points you to a part of our main website that's focused on this, and we'll continue to update that. So if you just remember Cloud Security Alliance.ai, that's a good way to sort of stay abreast of announcements that we're going to make in this space. All right. Well, I hope you guys are supportive of this, excited about it. I hope this is something that you are thinking about a lot for your own organization, and that we can learn from you, and hopefully you can learn some from us here in what we're doing. And you see Eileen and myself's email addresses there if you don't already have them on screen, and feel free if you want to use that as well to go shoot off messages and give us your thoughts, and let us know how you'd like to be involved. And then make sure at that membership at cloudsecurityalliance.org, you let us know who you want to have in that group. And we'll make sure you get these slides. All right. Cool with that. I think we'll just then go ahead, let you have a couple minutes before your meeting on the top of the hour and go take care of any personal business. And we really appreciate your time, and we'll be following up soon. So take care and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye.